Business was not as usual at the state capitol today after a lockdown was issued because of reports of a credible threat. But to understand why, we have to actually go back to last night. So this is Jackson Piney, who was just arrested hours ago. Last night, he was driving around shooting a gun from his truck. He first fired shots in Citrus Heights. Then he shot at the Kaiser Roseville off Eureka and hit the Women's and Children's Center building. And thankfully, no one over there was injured. And then this morning, Piney's truck was flagged near the Capitol building, placing everyone in the lockdown, and people stayed inside their offices until they were obviously given the all clear. But we now know that Piney is facing 4 charges, including attempted homicide. So we are continuing to cover this story, and we'll bring you updates as we get them, along with our full report coming up tonight at 11. But now to our main point. You know, we always bring light to important issues here on To The Point, but we also really try to focus on possible solutions. And that's why we feel your pain when a solution just stalls. So tonight we're talking about homelessness and a shelter for 125 people that has sat unused for 8 months now. Several of you have reached out to us asking for an update. So Becca Habegger here once again giving us an update because the county actually gave you an update this week on this, right?
Yeah, you know, those 100 cabins sitting at Florin and Power and Roads, they're set to open now in June. You know, that's after several delays, in fact. I'm going to, in fact, update you on 3 county shelter projects. One is right here at Florin and Power and Roads. That's the one we've been talking about. There are 100 of those shelters, those cabins sitting there. They've been sitting there for about 8 months now. Now, about 2.5 miles west at 7001 East Parkway is another site. There's going to be 45 cabins placed there. And then the third Safe Stay community site is up here on Watt. It's a little bit farther away, and it's on a little bit longer of a timeline, Watt Avenue and Roseville Road. So I want to give you an update here on the county's progress at all 3 sites.
Sacramento County is planning 3 so-called Safe Stay community sites. Each will serve as temporary transitional housing, offering someone a sleeping cabin or safe parking, meant to be a better solution than staying in a tent or on the street, but not permanent. The first site at 8144 Florin Road was originally supposed to open late last summer. 100 cabins were constructed starting late July, able to house up to 125 people, but delayed approval by county supervisors due to concerns some neighbors raised pushed the opening back to November of last year. We checked out the site back in November and it was definitely not open. That's when we talked with Andy Schroeder, who told us he'd like to stay in one of the shelters.
I wouldn't mind. Yeah, I wouldn't mind being involved with that.
At the time, a county spokesperson said the revised opening date was late spring 2023, citing a number of delays due to material supply chain issues, contractor delays, and the overall change in design concept by our on-site operator. So is late spring still the timeline? Well, the county told me this week this site here at Florin Road is now set to open in June. Up to now, the delays have added about $500,000 in costs as the county pays for security to monitor the site 24/7 while it sits unused. Let's check out the second site at 7001 East Parkway. No cabins have been built yet, but 45 of them will eventually sit in part of the parking lot of the current County Department of Health Services building. Originally set to open in early 2023, it got pushed back to late spring and is currently set to open in August. And finally, the site at 4837 Watt Avenue. In November, county supervisors approved the funding to purchase the property, which includes a parking lot and existing building. It's eventually expected to include 140 cabins to house 160 people, with additional space for 50 cars or RVs. It's on a different timeline than the other Safe Stay community sites, and a county spokesperson told us this week Watt is currently in the design and programming phase, and we'll have a better timeline on the completion of that project once we're done with that. Once completed, the 3 sites will be able to temporarily house about 400 people altogether. That's as more than 9,200 people are experiencing homelessness throughout Sacramento County.
And one of the people who emailed us about the 100 cabins sitting unused at the Florin Road location said it was fenced in with regular chain link fencing, but recently they put up a barrier that's been inserted into the fence holes that you now can't see through the fence anymore. Exactly what are they hiding? Well, indeed, here's how it looked back in November, and here's how it looks now. In fact, I snapped this photo just this morning. So we looked into it, and it turns out the original plan calls for what's called a permanent privacy fence. Plans presented to county supervisors almost a year ago call for a, quote, 7-foot-high perimeter fencing with privacy shading. So this was always in the works. They just finally got around to it between November and this morning. Well, a little bit before this morning, of course, but that's when that photo is from. And Alex, a reminder that this story, this update came from viewers reaching out saying, hey, what gives? What's with these cabins? Let us know. So we always love hearing from viewers.
Yeah, that's right. We always tell you right into us. Let us know. We do really want to hear your thoughts so we can give you updates just like what Becca did. All right, Becca, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we also want to keep you in the loop on a separate temporary housing project that we've been following, because last month Governor Newsom and Sacramento's mayor announced the plan to bring 350 sleeping cabins to the site on the Cal Expo campus. And Newsom said that he hopes for those to be open in fall of this year. So we asked the city for an update on that too, and they said that the timeline has not changed and the plan is for the cabins to be installed in the coming months. And just yesterday, elected leaders from across the state, they met up to come up with a plan to tackle the homelessness crisis. And the conclusion? Well, cities are asking for $3 billion a year from the state to help build affordable housing. And they say that this is a crisis that's only getting worse by the minute. Morgan Reiner has all the details.
In the heart of the state capitol,
working together for one common cause.
Hundreds of elected leaders from cities and counties attempting to solve a crisis that's top of mind for Californians.
Because we have a lot of work to do.
Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg and County Supervisor Rich Desmond led with opening remarks together, highlighting a partnership he says the rest of the state must follow.
And not just in words, we actually have a binding partnership agreement that calls for the city and county and the health plans to add 50 new encampment engagement outreach workers.
Steinberg is the former state homeless task force chair and said it's the counties that are in charge of the health departments across the state. But he says the problem with that, homeless people are mostly congregated within cities.
And so historically there has been this tension, and there continues to be, where the cities have said we need more help. And the counties have said, well, we will help, but it's not really our mission and our job.
But the League of California Cities believes solving the crisis is not obtainable without more money from the state.
Frankly, while the investments that have been made are certainly welcome and they've been put to good use in our communities, this is not a one budget problem. This is an ongoing problem, and we really need the resources that are commensurate with the scope of the crisis. We won't solve it in one budget cycle.
A proposed industrial park is making a lot of people unhappy in West Roseville. So we asked the developer in the city what they would say to residents who aren't on board with the project. That's after the break.
There may be 1,000 additional heavy-duty tractor trailers per day on Blue Oaks.
My wife and I both just invested very heavily in this community. An industrial trucking center coming soon that they didn't want to advertise so heavily. There was no signs where we could see him showing that. In fact, I feel like I need to be here to represent my family and my future family and their interests, that we don't want a trucking center in the area that we envision our children riding their bikes to school and to the park and hanging out with their friends and having just an amazing Roseville childhood the same way that my wife and I did.
As a resident of Roseville, I don't understand why the city didn't stop this project when the draft EIR first came out. It seems like it is not consistent with the city's strategic plan and vision for our community.
So those are just a few of the residents that we spoke to last night out in West Roseville who were at a meeting to talk about this empty plot of land along Phillip Road where an industrial park is being proposed. And this is an area where many people, they just bought their new homes and more homes are being built. The industrial park would be made up of about 15 buildings totaling to over 2 million square feet. And that's like having 16 Costco's in your backyard. And most neighbors we spoke to are not happy about it. And it was a packed room last night at a meeting with the city and developer. We got a chance to speak with them before the meeting. And one of the things that both of them stress is that this project is in the really early stages. Nothing has been determined, but the city says that something will be there. And we also asked them what they would say to residents who aren't on board with the project and what do they want residents to know. Here's what they had to say.
Public engagement is really important to the city of Roseville, so we encourage people who have feedback, have comments, to reach out to the city.
Development is a collaboration between folks who live in the neighborhood, someone who's willing to come and actually build a site in the local jurisdiction. So all of those folks are involved. This is a public process, and that is part of the process to understand what do people want, what is the vision for the site, and in partnership with the city and the local community, we develop a vision.
Now, I do want to mention that there were so many speakers during the public comment that one resident told me not everyone got to speak. But if you do want to share your thoughts, you can submit them to the city of Roseville before April 21st. I believe it's 5 p.m. You have to submit your comment by. We have all that information online at abc10.com/tothepoint. And anxiety disorders, it's one of the leading mental health issues in our country. In the final part of our series, Anxiety Nation, we're looking at how people who suffer from anxiety are living with it. Debilitating feelings that leave you worried, tense, or afraid. You or someone you know likely has an anxiety disorder. In fact, over 40 million adults in this country do. So this week, we're talking about what anxiety really is, what triggers it, and how people are finding help. And we also want to hear from you. What do you do to calm your anxiety? You can scan that QR code on your screen, text us your answer. But here is part 3 of our series, Anxiety Nation.
Body tension.
Your heart beating.
I can create scenarios that never even existed.
Clench their jaws, grind their teeth.
It feels like a weight.
It feels like drowning.
Anxiety Nation.
It didn't have a name. It didn't have any understanding around it. For me, it was just my personality. It's just who I was as a character and as a person. There are times that my anxiety becomes overwhelming and it triggers my depression. So it will then at that point need to take medication so that I can, kind of reduce the symptoms.
I realized real quick that I couldn't separate from the monster long enough that I could get skills or I could calm down long enough. I want to be able to turn him on, but I want him to be controlled. I want him to be managed, and then be able to turn him off and put him in his little box.
Combined methods of treatment tend to be more effective in managing anxiety.
All the literature would say that the best treatment for all psychiatric conditions, but particularly depression and anxiety, is the combination of therapy with medication. Deep breathing, things like exercise, things like meditation, they're all options to help decrease your anxiety, but you shouldn't just do it because someone tells you to do it. You should try it out, see if you like it, see if it works for you.
Has meditation helped manage your anxiety specifically? And has meditation helped manage stress for you in your life?
I was very resistant to pursue medication as an option, as that goes for talk therapy as well. But I've come to lean on both of those tools in addition to my meditation practice to support my healing and just taking care of myself.
Some treatments more than others can help rewrite your brain.
This idea of neuroplasticity that we hear so much about, that just using my mind in a certain way can actually change how the brain functions and also physically how the brain is.
There's a natural progression of treatment. Meds, mindfulness, cognitive behavior, and then what happened to drive me to ketamine is that I wasn't able to turn off the triggers. I could start seeing that they were coming, but I couldn't stop them. So now I recognize what happens after the fact. I recognize some of the triggers.
Studies have shown that repeated ketamine infusions are beneficial in reducing depression symptoms.
They're awake, they're just in this sort of disassociative space, sort of having that, it's not a true psychedelic, but it's a psychedelic-like experience.
I would watch what happened to me in my trauma event through multiple of them. And then basically at the end, I would see that, okay, in the end, the only thing that mattered is how I responded to it then and after, and that I made it out safe.
And when you've got a traditional treatment such as SSRIs or SNRIs or tricyclics, that your first line therapy has about a 33% success rate. Ketamine, most of the research shows a 70 to 80% success rate.
Coping skills are really like hobbies, and they're not something where you can one size fit all everybody. Medication can have really amazing results in anxiety, but at the same time, I often tell people, well, of course you still have the worries, of course you still have the triggers, of course there are things still going on in your mind that medication's not going to wipe away.
Not every person is going to feel everything, and not every person is going to feel anything. It's just understanding what does it look like for you, and then what is it that I need to do to get to a point where I have a better management of this diagnosis.
I don't believe you can ever get rid of him no matter what treatment you do. There's no way to completely bridge what your old memories were before to now and skip all the things in between. The struggles, we call it what crosses we bear, also makes us who we are today.
And anxiety does look different for a lot of people. We've actually been hearing from a lot of you, and I just want to say that I deeply appreciate you taking the time to just write in and share some of your personal experiences dealing with anxiety. So I want to read some that wrote into us. One person saying, what triggers anxiety is thinking about the past or the future. Stay in the present moment. We also had someone else writing in saying, what triggers my anxiety is when other people around me are upset and I have to walk on eggshells. Another viewer writing to us saying, my anxiety is lack of finances, food insecurity, something that a lot of people are dealing with right now. What triggers my anxiety is constant worry, stress, diagnosed with a brain tumor in October of 2019, and then COVID hit. And our last viewer here, what triggers my anxiety is after being attacked by a person on the street and a gun being pulled out on me. Again, we hear your comments, we hear you, we see you, and thank you so much for writing in. I do want to share that tomorrow we'll be speaking with a doctor to continue this conversation about anxiety. All right, let's take a look at our weather here. We're actually going to have a pretty beautiful oh, that is not the weather. We're actually going to do talking points. So here's some other stories that we're talking about today, something we mentioned at the top of the show. This man is Jackson Piney. He was just arrested for firing a gun from his truck around Citrus Heights and Roseville last night. He drove by the Capitol building in the same vehicle this morning and set the building into lockdown. He is now facing 4 charges, including attempted homicide. And then we have 17-year-old Ty Ken. He was shot and killed at Unity Park in Stockton just yesterday. He was a student at Cesar Chavez High School. A second teenager was also injured. The shooting happened 15 minutes before the end of the school day, and that prompted a lockdown on the campus. And when it comes to drought, California is in the best shape that we have seen in 3 years. There are no areas in the state with severe drought. You can see here the first comparison from this time last year with a whole lot of red. Now the majority of the areas facing any kind of drought are just abnormally dry or in the moderate drought conditions. And now let's go to our forecast, taking a look at this. All good news here. We're seeing some beautiful weather, getting ready for the Kings game. Sacramento 68 right now, Modesto 65. Let's get to our 10-day forecast so you can know how to dress for that Kings game. Looking nice in the 70s. We are 2 days away from the NBA playoffs, and the Sacramento Kings are taking on the Golden State Warriors at the Golden One Center Saturday night right here on ABC 10. And the Sacramento Kings merchandise obviously is in high demand, and many local creatives are using their talents to keep the Sacramento pride alive. So Creative Contents, they are a custom t-shirt and printing shop that provides everything from graphic design to embroidery. Now they're getting a lot of requests for merchandise.
Back in 2002, 2003 Kings era, they're the one that really put Sacramento to the map. I think it's very cool that there are these creatives and like even normal Sacramento residents that start to become creatives by just picking those elements and making a brand out of it.
And if you would like to check out their products, you can go to abc10.com/links. We have all the information you need. And then also tomorrow, the Kings are holding a rally next to the Golden One Center to celebrate the end of their 17-year playoff drought. We'll have full coverage and all the excitement right here on the news. So we'll see you later. Have a great night. Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really love hearing from everyone, and I hope that you'll stay in touch. Reach out to me on Facebook at AlexBellTV, or you can email me at tothepoint@abc10.com, or you can even send me a text message at 916-321-3310.